Oh boy, I'm going to get crucified for this one, aren't I? So, recently I bought Alien Isolation secondhand on PlayStation 4. And after playing the first 4 to 5 hours of the game, I came to the conclusion that it is one of the most overrated and severely over-defended games. Not just by Alien fans, but also by gaming enthusiasts alike. Now, before I proceed with this rant, I want to disclose a few things. I do not have any problems with survival horror games or stealth games. I'll admit I'm not the biggest fan of those genres, but I do have and have finished a few games in those genres. I mean, at the moment I'm playing Styx Shards of Darkness and I'm quite enjoying it. I thought The Evil Within 2 was pretty good, and I loved Dead Space 1. I also want to disclose that I'm not personally an Alien fan. You know, I don't have anything against it, but I have got no real interest in the universe or any of its spin-off content or merchandise or anything of the sort. So when I came into this game, I had pretty neutral expectations. I just wanted a good survival horror game, because that's really what Alien Isolation is a alien-themed survival horror game. Before I tear this game to pieces for why I think it's utterly crushed by a few crippling flaws, I want to talk about some of the really great positives of Alien Isolation, because the positive aspects of it are truly incredible. Fantastic. They're probably better than any other game before it, at least with the things it does well, in my opinion, or at least up there with the best. So, what are the great things about Alien Isolation? Well, the sound design, the musical score, and the faithful recreation of the feel and atmosphere of Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien film. All of these things it does brilliantly. When you first boot up the game, you see, the Creative Assembly and Sega intro logos, and you see it with like that cool 1980s fuzzy VHS effect. So that's already a good first impression. And then you get to the main menu and you see a really symbolic background image, how you've got the Sevastopol station just sitting alone in this wide open space with the giant gas planet that it's moving ever so closer towards. It really conveys isolation, hence the title of the game. And you've also got that incredible theme that's playing in the background that's really eerie, and it even appears sometimes during gameplay. It really does make a great first impression. Then you start the game, and what do you find? You find that the voice acting is phenomenal. The characters are pretty good as well. They really feel like they're part of the Alien universe. They don't feel like they're just tacked on for no reason and have the Alien name attached. They do feel like genuinely part of Alien. I mean, the graphical fidelity, I don't think it was groundbreaking at the time, but it sure as hell did its job. When you start playing the game, you enter the Sevastopol. Even before you get onto the Sevastopol, you wander around and you see all the quote-unquote futuristic computer terminals, and it's really faithful in it. And even though I personally haven't seen any of the Alien films, from what I've heard, it's very accurate. And I do genuinely feel like I am part of this universe. Like, I don't just feel like... It doesn't feel gamey in that sense. Really, the only issue I could say with the presentation, in all honesty, is that on PS4, the cutscenes stutter really horribly. I do not know why this is. It's worse than any other game I've seen, at least in recent years. But yeah, I do not know why that's the case. And I said the sound design was great. So during gameplay, it's obviously a survival horror stealth game, and as I'm sure everyone watching this will know, that one of the main drawing points to Alien Isolation is hiding from the alien xenomorph and, you know, encountering it. So, and there's really wonderful sound design, you know, obviously the music's great, but also when you hear like the thuds of it crawling around in the ventilation systems and it slowly moving around the general area when it's trying to stalk you, and you hear the hisses and screams of it when it comes across its prey and stuff like that. It's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful stuff. But unfortunately, that's really where pretty much all the positives end for Alien Isolation, because then we get to gameplay, and the gameplay is where this game falls apart. Now, I want to stress that for the first 3 missions, I would say, the first 3 hours or so, it is actually genuinely a great experience. Why? Because the developers smartly chose not to show the alien until about the 3rd mission. This is really great because it really builds this wonderful anticipation of, you know, when am I going to see it? It constantly builds this fear, and it's really effective in that regard with the great lighting effects and the wonderful use of fog and top-notch atmosphere. Truly, truly, truly top-notch atmosphere. But once you encounter the alien for the first time, and once you eventually encounter the working Joes, which are one of the other enemy types, basically that's where the game devolves into a completely monotonous and boring slog of sneaking, hiding, and doing quick time events. That's ultimately what this game is. So one of the big problems with the game is there's only 3 enemy types. This game goes for 20 hours long, and I'll talk about why that's even more of a problem later on. But in these 15 to 20 hours, there are a grand total of 4 enemy types, actually. But the 4th one you don't see until the last quarter, and it's not exactly a special enemy type. It'll be very familiar to Alien fans, and the way it acts isn't particularly interesting. But most of the game, 3 enemy types. The alien is obviously the centerpiece of it. Now, when you encounter the alien, there's a few very fundamental flaws with it. You can't kill it. Now, that inherently isn't necessarily a problem. An invincible enemy is not necessarily a bad thing. The problem, though, is that, one, if it sees you, you're basically dead. If you start running, it'll hear you and you're basically dead. You can distract it, and you can temporarily annoy it, but with very specific items that I might add you don't even get until about halfway through the game, where it will temporarily leave the area. But really what ruins these encounters for me and makes them become an incredible drag so quickly is the fact that the AI of the alien is not scripted. On the surface, you're like, oh, this is great, this is dynamic, you know, this is never before seen. But the problem, though, is that the reason why older stealth games worked really well is that enemies had patrol patterns. They were predictable in how they would react to certain situations. Here, the alien is random. It has obviously confines and where it can go, but it doesn't have a set patrol path. So sometimes what you'll witness is the alien will, for minutes at a time, constantly hang around your general vicinity, which means sometimes you're stuck in a fucking locker or an equivalent hiding place for ages, and it's infuriating. And sometimes you'll try and, like, it'll leave, but then it'll randomly come straight back. And so sometimes it'll do like a fake out, and when you die to that, that's very annoying because you can lose a lot of progress. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So yeah, that's fundamentally why I do not like the alien encounters. The working Joes, they're pretty similar to the alien. You can kill them, but killing them, to put it simply, requires 6 headshots with a revolver. And, ammo is not exactly common because this is a survival horror game. The shotgun, fairly effective against it, but you don't get that until about 2/3 of the way through the game. They have patrol patterns, but all they do is basically walk back and forth, and when they see you, they just do a fast walk and come after you. That's basically it. There really is nothing else to the working Joes. You can't stealth kill them either because then they'll just hurt you, and yeah. Then there's the humans, which are paranoid and full of fear based on the events that have occurred up to this point. And so if they do come across you, they will try and kill you with firearms the vast majority of the time. Now, you can't kill the humans, although, again, the game constantly discourages you from confronting enemies. So what you'll end up doing most of the time is just sneaking around and hiding. That's ultimately what the vast majority of Alien Isolation is. Sneaking, hiding, and doing quick time events. Now, I'll actually talk now a bit about the quick time events because this game is chock full of them. That is what I would say 1/3 of the game is, or at least 1/4 of the game is just quick time events. There is a brilliant variety of locked doors in this game. Seriously, you'll have locked doors that are either clamped shut, you'll have doors that have no power, you'll have doors that require a key card, you'll have doors that require an access code, you'll have doors that require you to use like a special torch to remove a metal plate and flick a switch, you'll have doors that require you to restart a generator. It's truly baffling, actually. And what this means is that, especially considering the game is 20 hours long, you are going to be doing a whole lot of finding some item or restarting some generator just to open a door. The amount of back and forth you have to do is ludicrous in this game. It gets boring after 5 to 6 hours, and this game is 20. Just think about that. And the game does not change. I want to really emphasize this, that once you've played, the first 3 or 4 missions, you've pretty much played the whole game. Really, there's not much else to it than that. And this is made all the more worse by the ludicrous level of backtracking. The sheer amount of time you're going to be visiting older areas just to open some door, because that's really the end point of the game. The whole point of the game is opening doors. It's incredibly tedious. It gets so grating, and you just want to be done with it so quickly. Now, I think the most critical problems with the game is padding. I already mentioned this game is 20 hours long. It should have been 8 at most, probably around 6. Based on what you're doing for most of it, which is sneaking around, hiding in lockers, and doing quick time events, and the rest is cutscenes and story content. That's really it. And it really doesn't help that the scenery is all the same. There are a couple of moments in the game where you do actually get to see some pretty nice spectacles, but these are very far and few between. Most of the time, you're going to be literally going across the exact same corridors for the umpteenth time to fetch something, to open a door, to whatever. It's mind-numbingly boring stuff. I mean, what else is there to say? The game has a very old-fashioned save system where you go to phone booths to save your progress. Now, there is nothing wrong with this. I am not advocating for this game to have checkpoint saves or even to have a regular manual save feature. The problem is, one, because of the padding and because of the random nature of the alien AI, sometimes what can happen is you can lose 15 to 30 minutes of progress, all because the alien just randomly saw you or randomly turned around completely in an unpredictable fashion and insta-kills you, which means you've lost all that progress. Now, there have been times where I've lost 15 minutes of progress. I thankfully haven't gone to the point where I've lost 30, and I stopped before that could happen. But I know people who have lost 30 minutes of progress, and it's ridiculous. I do not see how that should be acceptable. Apparently it gets better later on. There's actually more frequent phone boosts. And the reason I know this is because even though I stopped playing after the first 4 hours, 5 hours, I did watch a playthrough of the rest of it. And I'm so glad that I didn't continue because the game basically does not change at all and gets even more tedious and ludicrous, and the goalposts get pushed back so many times. The sheer amount of bad luck in this game, like aside from the locked doors, is just hilarious. It's like, oh no, the power's gone out, or oh no, this is broken, or oh no, I need to fetch something. It's just exhausting, and you just think to yourself, like, come on, just end. And really, I think the last thing I want to talk about is people's reaction to negative coverage of this game. Like, IGN's review of the game is actually pretty controversial. It's got something like, I don't know, 80% dislikes or something like that. But this is one of the rare times, at least in recent years, where I wholeheartedly agree with IGN's review. Ryan McCaffrey reviewed it, and he pretty much pointed out every problem I have, or at least the most significant ones. You know, he was mentioning how the game was 3 times as long as it needed to be, and I do wholeheartedly agree. And also, the ending, I've seen the ending. It's not good. It's not worth it. Don't play it for the ending, because I won't tell you what happens, but it makes you feel like the whole thing was a waste. People have got so butthurt over that review. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing, but people were going as far as to say that IGN was single-handedly responsible for causing the game to have poor sales and not get a sequel. You know, that sort of shit is just preposterous and stupid, and you guys really need to get a grip, because I think that perfectly encapsulates why people think gamers are entitled. Look, I think that'll probably wrap up my rant. I think I've covered everything I wanted to say. I'm just glad I don't have to play it anymore. I ended up getting a refund on it because it was within my 7-day trial period, and I exchanged it for Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, and I can tell you, and that, funnily enough, goes for 20 hours as well. And I can assure you those 20 hours are far better than Alien Isolation's 20 hours. I can guarantee that. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you all later.